The Fiscal Commission will come into effect on January 1, 2025. Me begin by acknowledging the Master of Ceremonies, or Chairman of EPOC and the Fiscal Advisory Committee, Mr. Keith Duncan, Fiscal Commissioner to my left. Congratulations on taking on a most important job. Members of EPOC, members of the Fiscal Advisory Committee, members of the media, other distinguished guests. Good afternoon. I am sure that you will agree with me that today represents yet another chapter in our economic history as we continue on the path of entrenching fiscal responsibility and sustainability in the Jamaican economy. If you will recall, in 2013, Jamaica began a series of program engagements with the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, with the goal of restoring macroeconomic stability and placing Jamaica on a path of sustained growth. But if you will recall as well, 2013 was not the first time Jamaica had engaged with the IMF. Jamaica has had a long history with the IMF since becoming a member in 1963. Over the decades, the engagements have been many. Programs have sought to address economic challenges such as balance of payment deficits, high public debt, low growth, and structured inefficiencies. The IMF programs have played a significant role in Jamaica's economic policies, aiming to stabilize the economy, reduce public debt, and promote sustainable growth. It was back in 2013 that the Economic Program Oversight Committee, EPOC, was born. It was established to monitor the implementation of Jamaica's economic reform measures under its agreement then with the IMF. EPOC, as you know, is a broad-based coalition of persons from the private and the public sectors and civil society. Committee members monitored macro fiscal targets and reported to the Jamaican citizens on the country's performance. Importantly, EPOC was a critical mechanism in gaining social consensus and getting the buy-in of the Jamaican people around the reform measures. EPOC performed this task so magnificently that when our precautionary standby arrangement with the IMF was concluded in 2019, EPOC continued to monitor the progress of our now wholly domesticated economic reform program. Thank you to the members of EPOC for your service. The commitment to responsible fiscal policy and prudent fiscal management by successive administrations since 2013 has delivered a reduction in public debt to approximately 68% of GDP, the lowest in almost 50 years, and our debt trajectory is on track to meet the target of 60% of GDP by fiscal year 2026-27. So I can say, Mr. Chairman,
yes,
macroeconomic stability is now entrenched, and key economic indicators are aligned to create a positive outlook for growth and development. I'd like to thank again the members of EPOC, past and present, for your service to Jamaica and your contribution to this chapter of our economic history. Because of your efforts, fiscal consolidation is now embedded in the Jamaican consciousness, and we have a far greater appreciation for the importance of macroeconomic stability. As we make this transition from EPOC to the Fiscal Commission, continued fiscal discipline calls for stronger supporting institutions. Strengthening Jamaica's institutional economic framework is guided by three overarching principles. Number one, economic independence. The tenets of Jamaica's economic independence include well thought out economic priorities and the requisite framework, rules, and the environment that will allow Jamaican citizens to freely pursue economic activities in a way that promotes growth and well-being for all. Economic independence entails making responsible economic decisions to sustain the country's needs and policy goals. Such independence requires policy development and an institutional environment that will sustain long-term planning, implementation, and improvement. Number two, credibility. Jamaica's credibility is built on the trust and confidence of the public and the financial markets. Defining fiscal rules in legislation was a signal to our citizens as well as to the domestic and international markets that Jamaica is committed to the entrenchment of macroeconomic stability. Jamaica's fiscal policies have been hard-won, and maintaining access to financial markets at reasonable interest rates requires that the fiscal framework is sound and sustainable over the medium and long term. And the third is accountability. Jamaica's accountability is about responsibility and transparent government. As Jamaica advances on a new fiscal path, it will report openly on its finances to strengthen confidence and to promote credibility. With a new economic era, Jamaica will benefit from deepened transparency of the government's economic and fiscal decisions while promoting inclusiveness in its policy discussions. In order to further entrench these overarching principles, the government of Jamaica passed the Independent Fiscal Commission Act in 2021, establishing the Independent Fiscal Commission. The Independent Fiscal Commission is a permanent agency with a statutory mandate to assess publicly and independently, independent of partisan influence, a government's fiscal policies, plans, and performance against macroeconomic objectives related to the long-term sustainability of public finances and short to medium-term macroeconomic stability. The Independent Fiscal Commission is responsible for providing the public with an informed and independent, and I say that word again, opinion on the soundness and sustainability of Jamaica's fiscal positions and policies. In line with good international practices, this analysis will be carried out necessitating a role separate and beyond the current functions of the Auditor General in this regard. So the mandate of the Fiscal Commission incorporates some of the current functions of the Auditor General, including indicating whether the conventions and assumptions underlying the preparation of the fiscal policy paper comply with the principles of prudent fiscal management. It will also look to determine whether the explanations given by the government for deviations from planned outcomes are reasonable. It will validate the conditions under which the fiscal rule can be suspended and determine if corrective measures are sufficient to return fiscal balances to target. The functions to be performed by the Fiscal Commission that will no longer be performed by the Auditor General are solely in relation to specific elements contained in the Financial Administration and Audit Act. The Fiscal Commission will come into effect on January 1, 2025, and will be led by Mr. Courtney Williams, to my left, my immediate left, in his capacity as Fiscal Commissioner. Our first Fiscal Commissioner is a veteran of this very ministry, the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service. He previously spent 3 years at the IMF. On his return, he was appointed Deputy Financial Secretary here at the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service, and then he was recruited by the Ministry of National Security, where he served as Permanent Secretary prior to his appointment as Fiscal Commissioner in May 2023. The operations of the Fiscal Commission will be overseen by the Fiscal Advisory Committee, chaired by outgoing EPOC Chairman Keith Duncan. Thank you so much, Mr. Duncan. As it was with EPOC, the Fiscal Advisory Committee will have representation from a wide cross-section of society, including the trade union movement, civil society, academia, and the private sector. Along with Mr. Duncan, the committee members will include Mrs. Helen Davis White, immediate past president of the Jamaica Confederation of Trade Unions, Ms. Nancy Pinchas, I hope I said that right, executive director of the Council of Voluntary Social Services, Dr. Patrice Whiteley, head of the Department of Economics at the University of the West Indies, Mona, and Mr. Kareem Tomlinson, Managing Director of GK Capital Management Limited. Ladies and gentlemen, members of the media, I'm sure you will agree that we have made significant strides in achieving fiscal and macroeconomic gains over the past 15 years. With this transition, we are demonstrating our commitment to further institutionalizing the tenets of fiscal responsibility as we continue to adhere to and abide by the principles of sound public financial management. I want to just pause to thank former Finance Minister and the cabinet led by Prime Minister Holness for the foresight to look into the future, to see the enormous benefit to be gained by continuing to chart the path of fiscal stability and prudence. As we pivot to growth, it will be on a stable footing. However, I want to say we will not lose sight of the fiscal stability gains and the need to have the benefits persist into the foreseeable future. Jamaicans now and to come are counting on us. We will not disappoint. Let me also thank and acknowledge outgoing members, Robert Lumsden.
Richard.
They wrote Robert. Richard Lumsden, Septimus Bob Blake, Donovan Wignall, the support team of Althea Walters, Procom plus Adtelligent for social media support, and maybe, well, other persons who are not mentioned but did perform credibly well during that period of time. So I want to say thank you to all of you, especially the media, for continuing to help to carry the good news about Jamaica and its development. Thank you so much. God bless all of you. God bless Jamaica, land we love.